Hello, everybody. I'm finally back in my home, deep in the woods of northern Minnesota after 6 weeks, 42 days, mostly in big cities, particularly these past few days in New York City. And I have to say, in contrast, I'm really enjoying the silence again here. I spent most of my life living in big cities, in particular the first half of my life. I needed to, when I went to the countryside, I got bored and went stir crazy, and I needed the whole environment of a big city. But these past couple of days, I had some thoughts and experiences that I'd like to share with you about what can happen to a polyglot's ears in the big city if you're not used to that environment. And I have three observations. The first one is just sort of a descriptive observation, interesting thing to know about. But the second two are sort of more, to me, somewhat enigmatic, obvious examples of perceptual distortion due to sensory overload. But I'd be curious to know if anybody else has experienced anything like this or has any real cogent explanations for why these things might happen. So again, the positive, more positive, less perplexing experience that I have is whenever I do go to a big city and I'm able to walk down streets that are not too crowded, but do have other people walking on them, other people conversing. It's a real feast for my ears. I do try to be discreet, but I'm sure I'm not really all that. My ears are just peering in other directions and trying to listen to the languages that people are speaking, whether I know them or not. It's just fascinating to hear so many different languages. And I like to figure out if I can figure out what they are or if I understand them and whatnot. I'm not looking to fall into conversation most of the time, but as I said, I'm trying to be discreet, but probably people notice sometimes, and I sense that they notice, and then I am always able to turn that into a conversation. It's always very pleasant. I mean, I'm always able to sincerely say, oh, I'm sorry I was eavesdropping, but I love languages, and I heard you speaking, and what is your language? It sounds fascinating, or, or maybe I'm trying to speak it, and people are always happy if they're able to speak a language. So yeah, that's just a general observation, the opportunity that one has if one can appreciate the sounds of different languages while walking down streets where they're spoken. And again, you have a bit of space between you. But what happens when that space is taken away? As I said, I had two different kinds of experiences that I've had before in big cities, particularly when I visit them. Again, when I've lived there, it seems, yes, these things do seem to happen, if I recall correctly, but it's more the shock of the exposure coming from a very quiet environment to particularly packed and crowded environments like I've unfortunately experienced too many of in these past few days, be it at Broadway shows or events and convocations and ceremonies and just anywhere, being on airplanes, just packed together with other people, and particularly on subway trains in New York City. This is where I have had the most of these experiences. And the first of these, I'm going to call the resolution of gibberish, the dissolution of babble. Sometimes I'll get into a situation when I'm just, and again, it's most common on a train, so there's a lot of noise from the train itself and announcements and other people, music, but mostly people talking and things. And so the gibberish sensation I have is sometimes I'll just be listening and I'll hear people speaking around me and I won't be able to understand anything. It'll all sound garbled. I'll hear a word, it sounds like Persian, and then the next word sounds like Spanish, and then something Zulu or something. I don't know. It's just, it all sounds like total gibberish. And I'll listen and I'll wonder what's going on. And then boom, it will resolve and I'll hear that these people are speaking this language or that language. And it's not necessarily a question of my difficulty of understanding the language, but just not being able to perceive it as such. It's from a long time ago, not this past week, but I remember once I was on a crowded train in Berlin, in Germany, and I heard people speaking, and I thought it was some bizarre Germanic dialect that I'd never heard before, and it turned out to be a variant of English, northern, local, regional English, British English. And once my ears resolved that, I was able to follow along perfectly well with what happened. And other times, the gibberish sensation will resolve, and I'll be able to listen to the rhythm and be able to figure out that it's Thai or Shona or something. But that perception at first, that it's all, it's just all mixed together, whether I understand the language or not. Once it resolves in that moment, I don't have that issue again there. It doesn't come back, but might happen again another day. So I think that's obviously just due to sheer sensory overload, plus the fact that I do understand, I would understand a lot of these words as sounds, these sounds as words, or even if I didn't understand the meaning of them, I could, just understand the flow of a language. So my ears are attuned now to perceiving the flow of language, and when there's too many flows and too many other sounds, it all gets mixed together. So that's the best I can explain that. If you've experienced that, if you have any thoughts about that, I'd be curious to know. The second one is even, even to my mind, a little bit stranger, and I'm going to call this suspect code switching, suspect amounts of code switching. Anybody who doesn't know, code switching refers to mixing two different languages together, and it's stereotypically and most commonly done by two people who know two languages and will be speaking one and mix a few words of the other in. Stereotypically, you might see this in Western films, Clint Eastwood or Arnold Schwarzenegger or any number of Mexican actors speaking various mixtures of Spanish and English. So you hear that it's usually one sentence, one word, things slightly mixed together. But what I've been hearing in these big cities the past couple of times, and what I've noticed in the past, is entire conversations that I'll overhear, and it'll seem, well, they're having, these two girls standing in front of me on the train are having a full conversation in Hebrew, or these two people, next to me over here are having a full conversation in Spanish. So in the one case, I'll just understand words, aval, lo, but I can't follow what they're saying, but I know what Hebrew sounds like, and I'm sure that they're speaking Hebrew. In the Spanish case, I'll understand pretty much completely what they're talking about if I care to, if it's something interesting to me. And then, bam, all of a sudden, these same two people will not be speaking Hebrew or Spanish or whatever other language they were conversing in, but they'll seem to be speaking English, and I'll understand the conversation. It seems like the same conversation is flowing. So again, the number of people that can do that, or that would do that, doesn't seem to me that it seems to me I'm meeting too many of these to have these chance occurrences be that. There are people that can do that, but I don't think there are that many, and it's not that common to have that sort of level. Two people can speak perfectly in Cambodian, and then suddenly switch to French and maintain that for 5 minutes and then switch back to Cambodian. This is in real life, not a polyglot conference where people might be inclined to do that. So I think maybe, again, the possible explanations to this is one, that I'm wrong, and that there are more people out there that are doing it, and it's quite simply what's going on. But I don't think so. I think what's really going on is that my brain is translating at points, or blocking at other points, or translating into the sound or the rhythm of a language. I think that, and again, this is only happening on crowded trains where there are other people around me. This is not two people next to me, sort of freaking me out by doing this. I think that I'm somehow not really hearing this conversation, or I'm hearing the conversation in one language and then putting it into the next language in the other for some reason. It's rather enigmatic to me. I don't believe that there are that many people out there having that kind of conversation, and why they should suddenly switch and have the entire conversation be in another language. I think, again, it's more probably my brain doing something, my brain playing tricks on me, than that they're actually doing that. But I don't know. So again, I'm just curious. These are some experience of what can happen to a polyglot's brain in a big city. I'm the polyglot. If you know other polyglots, if you're one, or you're interested in that, or maybe you don't even have to be a polyglot to have these kind of things happen to you. If that's interesting, you have any thoughts about that, please share them. Thanks for listening. Good night.